Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we look to the Noise Marines, their origins and the early development of their weapons, all from Fulgrim by Graham Mcneil. We start with a remembrancer, Becca Kinska, who created a grand symphony which was listened to by the Emperor's children. One of them was Fulgrim, and his allegiance to Slaanesh created a demonically possessed orchestra, with the instruments themselves becoming sonic weapons, and these were then used in the Battle of Isfahan V. So it starts with the great work, the symphony, Maraviglia. The auditorium was covered in vivid colours and artworks. Niches displayed busts of both terror and, as the book terms it, hedonistic libertines. Some had bullheads and jewelled horns, and each instrument was a monstrous contraption of pipes, bellows, and crackling electrical generators, which in turn were hooked to towering stacks of mighty amplifiers, created specifically for this performance and designed to replicate the magical music of the Lair Temple. Becca commanded this overture. The music carried the emotion of the audience, and one feels anger building up within them, and then it bled away. The music had done that. The audience was rapt with the performance, and as it swelled to a crescendo, the curtain raised, and behind it more musicians were there, whose notes enwrapped the audience in power and sensations that give the crowd pleasure. A woman, Carolina Aseneka, began to sing, and she sung to heights no human could reach. It was beyond the five senses. A chorus joined, and Eidolon and Marius were panicked as their jaws began to stretch like snakes. The normal crowd began to fight with fist and teeth, or display emotion of carnal lust. The Astartes also were affected and fought. This orgy of fighting and blood spilling spread. A portrait of Fulgrim tried to break free of its canvas, and it shrieked. Light flowed from the orchestra pit, electrical fire from the instruments, and all who it touched gave themselves to the delights of their inner psyches. As the book paints it, the orchestra played as though their limbs were not their own, their faces twisted in horrified rictus masks, and their hands frenziedly dancing across their instruments with violent life. The music held them in its grip, and was not about to let any weakness on the part of its creators deny its existence. Pain could be heard in the voice of Carolina. The bones of her body cracked and turned to powder, but still the song emanated from her. Becca continued to conduct the chaos, and the body of Carolina warped further to a demonic form. Julius had never seen anything so simultaneously beautiful and repellent, a naked female creature that evoked both a potent loathing and a sense of sensuality that gnawed at the pit of his stomach. Additions with the new form were cramps where her hands used to be, but she moved now with the grace of a cat. The chorus joined in with her music and changed themselves, and Becca was killed by one of them, as was the orchestra, until the music ended and fell silent, and then only the noises of killing and copulation continued without end. Marius got into the pit and took one of Becca's instruments. The Emperor's children, Marine, held it like a bolt gun, and he drew a sound from it like the roar of a chainsword, and more of Fulgrim's sons attempted to bring back the music from the orchestra, and the music that had bedeviled them all. Fulgrim finds all this wondrous. Marius found as he strummed the instrument made a noise. A howling, pyrotechnic blast of sonic energy shot from its end and ripped one of the balconies from the wall in a devastating explosion. And with his example, the others used the instruments, and they together ripped apart the theatre. It was then turned on the crowd, and clashing chords like howls of ecstasy tore through a dozen mortals with an ear-splitting concussion, and each of Marius's victims thrashed helplessly as their bones snapped and heads exploded beneath the barrage of noise. "My Emperor's children," said Fulgrim, "what sweet music they make." We then pick this up later with them on the battlefield and give a few examples from there. He still carried the great musical instrument he had taken from Becca's orchestra, modified to bear spiked handles and grips to render it into a terrifying sonic weapon. Together he and his weapon unleashed a barrage of discordant scales that sent a dozen of the Morlocks into convulsions. And Marius released a howl of ecstatic joy, and his bizarre weapon amplified it into a screeching wail of deadly harmonics that ripped through the ground into a roaring sonic wave to explode amongst the front ranks of the Morlocks. The giant warriors were torn apart in a clashing shriek of oral power as the apocalyptic note made play of their armour and butter of their flesh. The Emperor's children screamed in pleasure at the sound, their enhanced senses and augmented brain paths rendering the discordant sounds into the most vivid sensations imaginable. And that, friends, is where I will end today's video. In my mind, in my head canon, I can just imagine the heavy metallic notes of Black Sabbath, Trivium or Metallica playing out through these instruments and ending the lives of those around the Noise Marines. A very fun concept. It feels very heavy metal and 40k to me, and I love it. Got a comment to make? Make one.